So BMC Discovery, out of the box, discovers a wealth of information about your estate, from the physical side that you have, so the servers and the network kit, through to a lot of the virtualization that you have, its configuration, so kind of the processes, packages, kind of what's installed on those platforms, and the software that you have as well. So what software is installed and running on those hosts, and more importantly, it's the relationships between those that is captured by Discovery as well. So when we're talking about business application modeling or creating business maps inside of Discovery, what we're talking about is taking specific parts of those discovered items, like hosts and the software, and relating those to a service that supports in the estate. That becomes important because then you start understanding how the underlying infrastructure and software actually provides services to the business, which then leads on to things like problem, incident and change, and kind of really getting down to the depth or a really good understanding of things that you're doing in the estate and how it affects the business and the service that you provide. So today's WebEx is going to be focused on business application modeling. I'm going to be assuming that you all have a good background in BMC Discovery, so I'm going to be delving kind of straight into application modeling as opposed to kind of taking time to explain any concepts or backgrounds. And kind of the main focus for application modeling this afternoon is going to be looking at three methods available to you, which is TPL, SAAM, or starting application modeling, and uControl, and kind of the benefits those bring, or why would you use a particular route in your application modeling project to kind of give you the speed and the rapid return on investment that you're trying to achieve. On the WebEx, we are going to be looking at building a business application this afternoon. We're going to be looking at the TekWurx Confluence application. This consists of an on-premise Atlassian Confluence web application. We have a load balancer that is sat in front of that. We have a TekWurx Author Central repository. We have this is a web-based application. It communicates with a number of other software components within our environment, but these aren't part of the application. It's kind of more interdependencies between different applications within our estate. To kind of store the documentation, we have a file share, an SFTP share. These are where documents are stored. We're going to be building that into the application because that's really important for Confluence to work and to be able to share the information that we have. And there is a package that deploys our ACR around our estate, which is called AAA_base. And again, we want to pull into our application map hosts where that package is installed. We also have this application across 4 environments. This is production, QA, UAT and dev, and therefore the exercise this afternoon is going to be how do we model an application across multiple environments. So as I mentioned before, we're going to be looking at the 3 approaches to creating that application map, TPL, SAAM and uControl. So let's dive straight into BMC Discovery, and the first one that we're going to be looking at is into the TPL side. So I'm going to go to Manage Knowledge, and this is where a lot of the TKU patterns are stored and all of our TPL code is. And I'm just going to very quickly scroll down to the bottom of this page. We're going to go to TekWurx Demo, Applications, and I'm going to pull up our TPL pattern. So I'm sure you guys have seen this before. So just very quickly, if we wanted to create the TekWurx Confluence application using TPL, this is what we would be writing. We'd be integrating code, and that code would be defining kind of the shape of the application, what kind of components we want in that application, how we want it to be built. And as you can see, some of these can be short, some of these can be extremely long to be able to write. So the TPL kind of route is typically the most complex way to create business applications. It's the one that takes the longest amount of time obviously because you're writing a lot of code, you're having to test it, you're having to debug the code. You need the skills to be able to write this code in the first place. So you would need to send your guys onto a training course, or you're kind of looking into hiring consultants or specialists to complete the project to run through. But TPL kind of is quite nice, because what you're actually doing in the code is you are in effect teaching Discovery how do I identify specific components that belong to the application or the service. So as it starts discovering things in your estate, it's automatically updating the application map, and it's looking for extra stuff. So what I mean by that is, as an example, we said we've got 4 environments in our application, and we had prod, QA, dev, and UAT. So what I'm trying to get to when I write my TPL code is I'm trying to be able to kind of write once, run anywhere. So rather than kind of hard coding things into here to go, it's this host, it's this piece of software, what we're doing is saying, here are a bunch of rules. I write it so that I can go and scan production, and it will say, here's your application running in production. But then I can go and scan QA, dev, and UAT, and it will also go and build that application in those environments based upon this code and the rules that I've written for the application. And that becomes important. It means it's dynamic. It means that we are picking up the application across multiple environments. And it also means that if we had kind of an old version sitting out there in the estate that we didn't know about, we model the code based on the application we do know, and this should then pick those old versions up and go, by the way, were you aware that this instance was sitting over here? Also, as your applications change, you deploy new versions, maybe your guys are deploying into new environments, then the TPL approach means that you are, or should be, if you've written it correctly, dynamically being able to pick those new environments up and therefore understand them without having to rewrite code, without having to redo business applications. So a lot of people do like the TPL approach, but as I've said, it is the most complex and time-consuming approach to be able to create applications. And then when you come into like the maintenance side or the update side, you kind of need guys in your team that can take the code, can tweak it, can change it, can upgrade it, can do things to that code. So moving on to Start Anywhere application modeling, let's actually have a go at using SAAM to build the TekWurx Confluence application. So what I'm going to do is, the whole concept of starting your application modeling is that you can start from anywhere. You can select any piece of information that belongs to your application that enables you to start to build your application. So if you remember, we had the Confluence web-based application, we had the ACR web components, and we had a file share, and we had a package. So I'm going to start by looking at the load balance part, and I'm going to scroll down into here. We're going to do a search for Confluence. I've got a hit. I'm going to grab the first one. What comes up on the screen is basically a picture of here's what I've selected, the Confluence URL. I said that it was a load balance web application, so we get our load balances, we get the Confluence app, and we're looking at the observed communications and dependencies and things that we have in our state. So what I'm going to do straight away is click on model on the left hand side, create new application model. This is going to be TekWurx Confluence production. Okay, we're going to save that. We're going to get rid of this guy, so we do not need that node. In part of it, it's not part of my app. Apache Web's load balancers. I'm happy that what I've got here relates to our Confluence web application, so I'm going to save and publish that. I'm going to do a yes. So what we've done here is we've very quickly created our first app using SAAM. Now that I've published it, it would mean our next scan that would be straight into our CMDB for us. I mean, as you can see, it's a fairly quick and straightforward approach. It's using what Discovery's already got and putting that into an application, or we're giving that group of things a business sensible name. And that's got the Confluence part. What about the ACR part? So I'm going to now go over and do a search for those. So I'm going to go over and do a search and query. As we can see, again, it's a web-based app. Here's our ACR part, and as you can see, we've got ACR, which is our production instance, then we've got dev, UAT and QA. So as we're building our production one, what I'm doing to do is I'm just going to grab these, and we are going to do visualize and model. So this is kind of all the communication that we have. So if you remember at the start, I said that we have the AR component, which is definitely part of our application. But it was communicating with loads of other things in our estate that were just dependencies. They weren't really our application. So what I'm going to do is we're going to click on model on the left hand side. Now we're not going to do create new this time. I'm going to do add to existing, and we're going to select TekWurx Confluence Production. So that's kind of put all those components in. Okay. So here's what we started with, which was the Confluence part, and now it's added in all of this information around the ACR side. So I'm just going to zoom in for here for a moment, and what we're going to be looking at is getting rid of all the things that we're really not interested in. Okay, so to do that, I'm going to flick over to my select mode, and I'm going to grab these bits here. And we're going to just do remove selected. We're going to grab these and we're going to remove those. And then I'm just going to get rid of him. And that's ACR and our Apache and all the bits that we have in here. We don't have a dependency to our test application, so we're going to remove him. And then again, on the other instance down here is exactly the same. So we're going to leave our ACR component in, but all the JBoss communication are just dependencies. So again, we're going to go to our select mode, and we're going to grab our selection here. And we are going to remove those, and then that leaves me with my ACR components. Again, I will publish that and say yes, we're happy for that Confluence production. So far from that initial list, I have our TekWurx Confluence site in, the load balancers in, and I've put in the ACR, which was the author content side. Two sections left for our application was the package, which was AAA_base, and it was also the file share. The package and the file share is where we hit our first limitation with Start Anywhere application modeling. The real point or purpose of Start Anywhere application modeling is to kind of pull together the relationship seen between running software and hosts in the estate. So it's not actually possible for me to add a file share using SAAM into an application map, and it's not possible for me to add a package into the application map using SAAM. However, with my experience of modeling applications in customer environments, they are valid reasons for things belonging to applications. You probably want to know that this host supports this application because it has a file share on it, and if you were to switch it off or it was to go down, you impact your application. It could be that Discovery is a point-in-time scanning tool, and applications can be firing off things at different times. So being able to use packages to say this host belongs to my app is also a valid approach if you can't see running software all of the time. So to be able to achieve that, you're now back to having to write TPL code. You're either going to have to turn the package into a software instance to include in SAAM, or you're going to have to start developing the application in TPL because you can't add those components through SAAM, or you're into saying, well, actually, we don't have the skills for TPL, and therefore we're going to have to just not include those in the application map in Discovery. Are the kind of the choices that you're now faced with. Okay, so let's change our focus to the environments. If you remember when we were talking about the TPL approach, we were saying that we were creating rules in the code that was kind of teaching Discovery how to identify things. And the idea was that we wrote it once, we could run it anywhere, so that we could scan production, we could find things, we could then go and scan other environments, and that code would automatically identify our application and bring things together. How about SAAM? Okay, so we know that we've now built production. We want to go on to build or have those other environments identified. Well, again, this is kind of another side of SAAM, is that we're not building rules in Discovery to say, here's how you identify this application, go and find it in other places. What SAAM is doing is we are selecting components and saying those components are our production instance. So it will update itself dynamically, as in if those hosts or software components disappear from Discovery, or if it sees observed communication from those components to other things, they will automatically get pulled into and update the map. But what it will not do is it does not take this and then go, by the way, I found dev and UAT and QA. What we have to do is I'm going to go back and I will go back to my search. We're going to go and grab ACR. What I now have to do is go and take my dev one and we'll say go grab dev. And we are going to go to model and create new. And we're going to go TekWurx Confluence dev. From here we are going to grab the JBoss stuff that we talked to, and we're going to remove those. And we're going to keep our host, or we're going to remove him as well. Here's my my component. We're going to save and publish that. So if I now go and have a look in my applications, you will now see that I've got TekWurx dev and production. And then I'm going to have to do the same for UAT and for QA. I'm going to have to go and search for the components, grab them, and I'm going to have to go and make the application instance. I have to do that for each instance that I want to build. Now in this instance here, for the Confluence side of things, it's a fairly small app. Not that involved. It's been fairly quick for us to build the main application and build all the instances. But kind of what about when we scale this into a customer environment? So if you have 100 applications, or you have 500 or 1,000 applications across 3 environments, you're actually now talking about modeling 300, 1,500 or 3,000 application instances. So then this then kind of leads you into, well, we obviously have to have a clearly defined process to be able to achieve that. And for that process, there's kind of 2 questions that we need to kind of ask. The first question being, who knows most about the applications? Now, obviously I knew information about the TekWurx Confluence one, but if I was in a site with 1,000 applications, I'm not going to know all of the information. So I'm going to be needing to be talking with people who knows the content or the structure of those applications across those environments. And then second of all, if I'm not the guy who knows all of that, how do we get that information? How do we turn that information into a model inside of BMC Discovery? So that kind of therefore typically leads to kind of maybe 2 choices or two processes. Answer to question 1, who knows most about the application, logically will be the application SME or the owner. So potentially what you can do is you could say, well, our application owners are going to be given access to Discovery, and they're going to be logging in and they're going to be creating their own apps. With that, therefore, they need a level of privilege in Discovery where they can read and write the information, because they need to be able to create things in that map. If you've used SAAM, you'll know that things that you do can have a global effect, as in if you delete stuff, remove things, it's not just for that user instance, it's across the whole of BMC Discovery. There's also no role-based access control, so if two people log in, they can see each other's applications, they can interact with, update and delete each other's applications. So kind of what a lot of people tend to do is, rather than having application owners logging in and doing things, they say, well, actually we're going to get our discovery team to be the guys that model the applications. Okay, so that's an approach. Potentially you're now introducing a bottleneck in the modeling process. If you've got 1,000 or 3,000 applications to map, having a 1 or 2 person discovery team, that's a lot of applications to work through. Number 2, how do they get the information from the application owners to be able to complete those maps? So when I've worked on large-scale application modeling projects in the past, kind of the process, or what we've kind of tended to do, is ended up with an application modeling questionnaire or spreadsheet. And the idea behind it is this gets sent out to all the application owners in the customer environment. And it's a way of collecting seed data or information about the application. And we just ask them to say, can you provide the name of the application, and then can you give us any details that you know of? So do you know the host it runs on? What key software or processes we should be looking for in the data from discovery? Do you know of any key identifiers? So maybe database SID names, config file names. Do the processes run as any particular usernames? Give us a description, send the spreadsheet back to us, and we can use that to start creating the application maps. So then what they would do is they get the spreadsheet with an example, and then they would complete a tab and say, here's my app, and here's the host I know of, it runs a database, and here's the key identifier that we're looking for. And then when we receive the spreadsheet back, we'd be logging into Discovery. So let's log in and have a look now. And in Discovery, we'd be going, well, can we see or find this data or information? So let's go and grab Moss. We'll have a look for Moss. We've got a large number of databases that have come back with Moss. Loads of things. They've said it's Moss underscore config, so I'll see if I can be a little bit more specific with my search. Okay, we've got 4, which is great. I come in here, and this is kind of the experience that I have with using this approach. Okay, so they've given us two names, MCR SQLDB 99 and 98. So I see we've got that. Here's 99 and here is 98. But then I look and they've given us mosconfig, and I'm seeing we've got mosconfig prod, mosconfig prod 20, mosconfig prod 23. They've only told us 2 hosts, 99 and 98. But in here I've got PR 08. And if config prod on DB99 is part of the application, should mosconfig prod on 08 be part of it or not? So then the loop you get caught in is you're going back and forwards between the application owner and the modeling team, going, oh, this data doesn't quite match what we're seeing in Discovery. You've not put the full identifier in. Should this or shouldn't be part of your application? And the main reason for that is they are obviously free typing data into the spreadsheet, and they're not referencing discovered data that's come back. So there will be a mismatch between the two. And this is kind of the loop that you get yourself caught into. Okay, things don't match. You're farming all these spreadsheets out, having all this data back, trying to build maps off of data that has come back. Okay. Halfway in, let's take a quick recap on the 2 methods that we've just looked at, TPL and SAAM. TPL is the most flexible option to work through. It gave us the ability to include custom ways and information to be able to kind of pull those application maps together. There weren't any components we couldn't pull in because basically we're writing the raw code for Discovery. However, it does require specialist knowledge and skills, experience and training to be able to create those maps. It does require the most ramp up time, and therefore typically you'll find there are less resources available to be able to have those skills to be able to undertake those type of projects. It can become the most time consuming approach to modeling as well. You will find that projects take longer to achieve if you're writing the code approach. But we also saw that what you're in effect doing is writing rules that enable Discovery to go and find that application across multiple environments, and as you are adding new things in, it should be automatically updating that map for you. We've just looked at SAAM. A big advantage for SAAM is that you are modeling without producing code. Therefore, it can be very rapid to produce. It does therefore mean, however, that you do need to be trained in Discovery or modeling. Therefore, there is some ramp up time to be able to be trained in Discovery, but that is significantly less than the typical approach. But then we saw that there are some limitations as to the type of things that you can pull in. So we saw that you can't pull packages in, you can't pull file shares in. So you can kind of get most of the way there with your applications. And in the vast, probably number of them, you get all of the bits mapped, but there will be some instances where you can't. And also, it's not teaching you rules of how to find it. It is literally just going, these things that I've selected are my application instance. And it will only therefore do the instance that you have picked or mapped. So if you are modeling across multiple environments, you have to do that exercise multiple times to create that map for each individual instance that you want to build. So that gap, and what I mean by that is the gap of wanting to be able to do things quickly across multiple environments without using code, but kind of not having that functionality in SAAM, is exactly where we come into play with uControl. So uControl gives you the ability to undertake your modeling projects without having to write any code. It can be used for rapid modeling, and it requires no access to Discovery and no training in Discovery or training in modeling at all. Typically with clients we work with, we see that the ramp up time for end users to be producing applications with uControl is less than an hour. It does automatically create models across multiple environments, so we're going to be coming on to showing you how that works, but you don't end up creating multiple application instances like you do with SAAM. With uControl, you are teaching Discovery rules, just like you were with TPL code. You're teaching it rules to say, here's how we identify things in our estate, go find it and tell me what we've got. On top of that, we have role-based access controls. So I mentioned that with SAAM, you have write access to Discovery, which means that you can update, change and delete other people's applications. You can't do that with uControl. It is true role-based access control for application maps. We capture an audit of the modeling activity, so you can see who's doing what, who's created what maps, what changes they've made, what activity they've undertaken with the product. And it provides automatic model change control. So this is kind of a really big thing that some people don't think about with the modeling project. So you have gone off and created your application maps, you have them in Discovery, but then over the course of time, things change in your environment. The model is updated, the application goes through version updates, components get retired, new ones get built. So there's a whole process that kind of needs to fit and work around, okay, they're built, but who's making sure they're up to date? Who's making sure they're accurate? Who's making sure that they are the latest version of the application map and it matches what's in the real world? So towards the end of the WebEx, we'll be coming on to that with uControl and how all of that all fits together and works. Okay, so let's get straight into uControl, and we'll have a look at the application modeling workflow and process within the uControl tool. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go straight over to the UMap side. This is where we produce the application maps. I'm going to manage applications. And to start with, typically what we would do with uControl is we would link this into a database or a system of record, or take a spreadsheet where we had a list of all the application names that you wanted to build or create in your environment. And we would load that into uControl so that kind of you have the framework for all of the applications that you want to work on. So as you can see, I've got one here at the moment, access channel request, and it just says to me that it's been assigned to someone and it's in progress. Monitored, meaning that we're monitoring it for change. We'll come on to that towards the end of the WebEx. Published, as in, has that application been created and built in Discovery and then on into the CMDB? At the moment, that's a no. So rather than doing an upload, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create one by hand. So we're going to stick with the TekWurx Confluence application that we're building with SAAM. We're just going to do share application ID tech 985. Select review period. We'll set that to quarterly. I'm going to come on to that at the end of the WebEx to explain what that means. And now we're down to basically the question of who's the best person to provide information about this application. So we can assign it to a team. We can pull those through from something like Remedy or Atrium, assign that to a specific team for creating applications. The beauty of that is if you assign it to an individual and they leave the organization, then you need to start reassigning apps to people. Whereas if you assign it to a team, then people can be leaving or being added to that team and have access to work on or view the applications in uControl. But the purpose of this afternoon, I'm going to click on myself. I'm going to add myself as the owner for this application. I'm going to do create. And as you can see, we've now got an application that's sitting in the management side. It's saying it's been assigned to a user. It's been created by, it's not been started. It is going to be a monitored app. And you can see that it's currently not published or not been worked on. And you might have seen at the top right hand side of my screen at that point, I've received an email from uControl as the application owner or the SME for the application, telling me that I have got or I've been assigned an application. I've got some work to do, and it gives me a link to log into the product. And in that link, it also gives me access to the documentation and access to a video on YouTube, which kind of tells me how the product works and what it does and what we need to do. So what I'm going to do at this point is I'm going to log out as the admin user of uControl, and I'm going to log in as myself. So I sign up here. I'm going to log in as Nick. As I log in, you'll see that I've got a lot less information down the left hand side because I'm now a standard user as opposed to an admin user. I'm going to go to UMAP, My Applications, and you can see that I've been assigned the TekWurx Confluence app, and I've not started it yet. So I'm going to click on that, and I'm going to do configure, and we're just going to say yes, I would like to start work on this application. So I wanted to flick your mind back to that Excel spreadsheet that I showed a few moments ago for collecting seed data about an application. So this is kind of basically what we're doing at this point. We've asked the SME for the application to log into uControl, and we're asking them to provide seed data about the application. Okay. The benefit of doing it through uControl is what we've done is we've pulled all the data from all of our discovery appliances into uControl. We have that here. So rather than the application owner free typing text that doesn't match and we're going back and forwards with the owner to clarify the data, uControl is validating what they're selecting as they pick the seed data. So we know it's right and we know it's correct and we know we can see it with discovery. Okay. So the TekWurx Confluence application, we had Confluence, Load Balancer, the web software, we had ACR across the 4 environments, which was prod, dev, QA and UAT. We had the package for the distribution and we had a file system share. Okay, so just like we did with SAAM, and what I can do is I'm going to go to my infrastructure page. I'm going to go to my load balancer. We're going to type in Confluence because that's the data that we have. We'll do a search. We're going to pick it here and we'll do link. And what uControl is saying is if I select this item, then not only am I going to pull the load balancer in, but I'm going to pull in all the connected hosts and software. So we're going to do link. Yes, I would like that to be pulled in to my application. Okay. We know that we had some installed software. So from a package perspective, we had AA base. Now, if you remember in SAAM, we couldn't add this, but in uControl, I can select AA base. We're going to do link, and we're going to say this is my rollout batch package. We'll set that. And what you'll notice is as I'm selecting things, we're now being told that we've linked one item of software. We've provided that in our seed data. we've provided one load balancer. It's automatically selected the software that was linked to, and we're automatically including the hosts as we're going through this process. Okay, I'm going to come over to my software side, and we're going to look at software components, and we're going to do a filter for ACR. We're going to do a search, and here we have my prods, my dev, my UAT, and my QA side. And so before I kind of link these, I just kind of want to have a look up here for you. And what you can see is as we're providing the seed information, as a kind of an application owner or the SME, I can start looking at what is the structure and how we like to see things. So you can see that I've pulled in the load balancer, we've pulled in the software that was linked and the host. I've got my package included, I've got my the host that sits on for us. So now I'm going to go and add in my ACR web component. We're going to link that in, and I'm going to select dev, UAT, and QA. We're going to link those as well. So what you can kind of now see is I'm starting to build up all my information in here. And one of the other things we had was the file system share, right? So if I go into my file system share, we go and look for SFTP, we do a search. And again, this is something that we couldn't pull into on a SAAM application model. We could have done through the TPL route, we can't on SAAM, but it's important to my app. So I can now select that, and I say we're going to link that, and this is my document share. We'll set that. And all I've really been doing as the owner, nothing complicated. There's no code to write. I've not logged into Discovery. All I'm really doing at this point is providing seed information. I can search through the discovered information. I can even do things like looking at the processes that are in here, right? So what are all the things that are running? What are the usernames? What are the custom processes? And I can just be kind of informing or loading into the system. These are the things that make these components belong to my application. Okay, I can put a dependency in here, so I can say I know this application is dependent upon access channel request, for example, and I can make inter-application dependencies, right? So let me just have a look at this. So at the moment we've got all of our pieces in here. We've got our Confluence site and we've got our not set or our environment. So one of the things with SAAM is when we wanted to create dev UAT, we had to go and model each individual instance. Because what we weren't doing is we weren't teaching Discovery rules of how to identify things. We were grabbing a group of things and saying that's my instance. Okay. So what I can do in here is if I go back to my hosts, okay. In fact, let's go over to infrastructure and my load balancer, and I'm going to say our load balancer is in production. So we'll grab that. We'll do a set. We're just really informing the C data that we're in there for us. I'm going to come to my server side, and from our server side I'm just going to grab these. In fact, I'm going to do that from my running software side, makes more sense. Let's go to my components. So we know that this one here is prod. We know this one with dev in the name is our dev environment. We know that this one here is our UAT environment, and this one here is our QA environment. And just by providing seed data, if I go and have a look at the instance that's sitting up here now, you'll see that I've got my production, I've got my QA, I've got my UAT, and I've got my development, and I've got my hosts and my software all grouped into what I've got here, right? So I can kind of go back now to my host page, and what's left. So these are not set, so let's grab those and say we're gonna put those. We're gonna put him into UAT. This one's gonna go into production. Okay, let me just have a look at the top now, and we've still got one that's not set, and we're going to say that this one is QA environment. So we're going to go back up to the top. We still got all our environments defined for our Confluence app. And all we've been doing at this point is providing seed data and seed information. Okay. I'm now at the point where I'm happy, I'm comfortable with what's been built in the instances that we've got. So I click on the validate, and the validate button just checks everything that we've done. Says, by the way, have I seen other things that kind of match the rule sets that you've built? In this case, we've collected everything that we need. And as the application owner or SME, I just click completed. And I say, yes, that's me now done. I've completed the information. Okay. So this is kind of one of the areas where we get speed and rapid ROI with uControl. We're not limited by the discovery team and 1 or 2 people in that team completing the application maps and models. Okay. If you think maybe an application owner may be responsible for 5 or 10 apps, let's say you've got 100 apps in your environment, so you're talking 10 application owners with 10 apps each. You could have those all logged in at the same time, completing their applications through uControl, providing the seed information. Okay. It makes it extremely quick and extremely fast to produce application maps using this tool. Okay. I'm just going to log myself out as the user. I'm going to log back in as the admin so you can kind of see the process from the other side of here. Okay. So if I go back to my UMap page and I go back to manage applications, what we now see is that it's been completed and we've not published it yet. What that means is even though we've collected seed data with uControl, we haven't created an application map in Discovery or the CMDB yet. It sits in uControl until the admins or the Discovery team review and approve that application map. So I can now click on that. I can click on the summary page and I get to see what did the application owner do. When did they complete it? What have they picked? Have they defined environments for all of the instances? Have they kind of misset the environments or not? I can kind of click on an environment at a time and say, well, I'd like to just see the production one. It filters this all down to the map and the host and the components that are for that environment. Oh, I can close that. And I can either reject it and say, no, they've not completed it, or there's bits missing or bits not right. This needs to go back to the SME to add more data. Or I can go, yep, I'm happy with that, and I can click on the publish. Publish means it then will create the application inside of BMC Discovery, which then by its nature will then be synced over to the CMDB for the whole problem, incident and change part. Now I appreciate that these are, it's been a very quick fly through of the functionality and there's a lot that we've covered in the WebEx. But just a kind of a quick summary of what we've just gone through with uControl, right? So we've been able to create an application purely by providing seed data into the tool. That has taken that, turned it into rules and rule sets to build the application. That means that we can model at speed, we can model with multiple guys rather than being a bottleneck on the discovery team. We can produce those application maps and models without writing any code. The ramp up time is extremely quick. You were able to see that we could create that application across multiple instances and multiple environments. We weren't having to go in and redefine the application loads and loads of times. And then as you can see, it keeps a track of, are things being worked on, are they completed, who's doing what with those tasks. So we have an audit of what's happening with the modelling activity. And then the bit we're going to come on to now is going to be looking at how we start monitoring and looking at changes to those applications and making sure that we're keeping things up to date. One of the areas usually overlooked with an application modelling project is the ongoing maintenance and upkeep of your application maps. So, for example, in 3, 6 or 12 months time, how are you ensuring that what you've got mapped in Discovery is actually up to date and accurate and reflecting the application in the real world? Well, with Start Anywhere application modeling, what we have with the application maps is an algorithm built into the product. So as discovery is taking place, this is looking at changes in relationships. So if you remember back to the previous part of the WebEx, we're not building rules to identify other parts. We're just looking at selected components and its relationships. So the algorithm looks at things that are connected to what we've selected and makes a decision on whether it's going to automatically update this map or whether it's going to put it into a revision mode, which means that someone needs to log in and approve it before any further updates take place. And that algorithm is something that you can't change. So if it automatically updates the map, then that automatically flows through to the CMDB, and then anything that is using that map now has a new map to work with. That's out of your control. If it puts it into a review state, then as I mentioned, no further changes take place until you've approved the new map that you've got. So let's kind of go and have a look at how that works in SAAM. So what we're going to do is I'm going to simulate a change to an application map by deleting a host. So this one down here, MCR Jira DPR 03, I'm going to go and click on that host. And what we're going to do is we're going to go and destroy this host. Okay. So what we're doing here is, in effect, we are simulating that through Discovery, this host has now been removed from Discovery. Now that can happen because you've got bad credentials, it's not been updating, host has been decommissioned, it's aged out of Discovery. There can be loads of reasons why models change. Okay, and if I kind of go back now to my application map and into production, you'll see when it comes up that we no longer have that 03 host in our map. More importantly though, to demonstrate, when I've looked at the pages here, what tells me that we've had a change to that application or things have dropped out? Okay, because there's nothing on this page apart from this activity stream down the bottom that says basically a host has been removed or deleted along with the software that was running on that host. Okay, so then if I look at these and go into the details, I'm not being told what host has been removed. I'm just being told a host has been removed from this application map. That's okay for this one single application, but what if we've got 200, 300, 500 applications? Okay, what I'm kind of reliant upon is coming across to my applications, looking at kind of the activity stream and trying to understand have there been changes to my application maps. So straight away we are now back to the fundamental question we asked around application modeling. If we've had a change to an application map, who's the most logical person to understand the change? Which would be the application owner. We already established that the application owner, we're not going to give permission to log into Discovery because there's no role-based access control and the things that they do. So we're now back down to it's the Discovery team that are checking whether applications have changed, and to check, they're having to craft custom reports or they're having to trawl through an activity stream to work out what's changed. They're then having to export that data from Discovery and then somehow interface that to the application owner to go, is this change correct? How do we update this map? Application maintenance and upkeep is therefore another area that we focused on with uControl to make it easier for you as an organisation to work with. So to start with, if I come over to UMap and I'll come over to manage applications, if you remember we have this monitored field, and what this means in uControl is that we are monitoring that every time Discovery runs, what is happening to that application? Is it changing? Are things being added to the map? So new components, new things that are matching our rules. If you remember, uControl is rule-based, not just what we selected. Have we seen new relationships, or have we seen issues with Discovery or hosts being decommissioned and things are dropping out of the application map? So first of all, I go to Configure when I set uControl up, and I come to Environments, and I can choose what environments do we want to monitor or raise change alerts for. So normally we would recommend that you had this set for production. So because those are the ones that you kind of really want to action the alerts for, and things like development, QA and UAT where you would expect change to be taking place, those ones we would leave as not monitored, so you're not receiving alerts. I'll come on to how you deal with those in a moment. And then underneath monitor CI fields, for each kind of type of information you're taking into your application map, you can choose which fields you would like to monitor for updates and change. So how do we deal with those environments, those other environments that we aren't monitoring? Okay, so if you remember, if I come back to Manage Applications and Add an Application, if you remember, we had this Select Review period on the top right hand side. Okay, so what this is for is we would like production to be a monitored environment. So as things are changing in our environment and that map is changing, we would like alerts to be automatically generated for someone to action. However, things like development, UAT, we're expecting that to change a lot, so we don't really want to have loads of alerts being raised for those, but we do want to make sure that the application owner over a period of time revalidates those environments to make sure they're accurate. So what will happen here, if we set that to monthly, for example, every month an alert would be automatically raised against the environments, dev and UAT, to ask the application owner to log in and validate that that application is now or still correct and up to date. So that's kind of what that's for. And more importantly, we route alerts intelligently. So if we realise that the reason that a host has dropped out is because we've had a discovery issue, then the alert goes over to the discovery management team if we've selected that. However, if discovery is successful but software has dropped out or been added to the application map, then it's more logical that this goes over to the application owner as opposed to the discovery team. Okay. So just like we did with SAAM, let's go ahead and let's replicate issue with discovery in our estate. So we've got the TekWurx Confluence application that we've published and is being monitored. So I'm just going to go into Discovery, go to Explore and Data, and we're going to go over to our model in Discovery. So this is our production influence, and we're going to go and grab this web DPR01 host. So we're going to go open that in the new tab, and just like we did with SAAM, I'm going to click on Actions and we are going to go and destroy this host. So again, this is simulating a host dropping out of Discovery for one issue or another. Now what you'll see in uControl is now that that application has been monitored and we have a change come through, if I look at the summary inside of here, you'll see that I now have some icons that have gone red. So this is our host, and our UI is showing us that our host is now invalid or disappeared, and because of that we've now lost 2 items of software from our map. So I see that we have some alerts that are in our application map, and I can kind of look at the environments that I have and start understanding exactly what has disappeared. So if you see down here, I get told that our host here in production is no longer valid. I know which host has been disappeared from my application map. I can click into running software. I get told the actual item of software that's disappeared from my application map. I can click into software component. I can understand that that is actually gone. More importantly, I get an email that comes through to me as the application owner to advise me that there's been an alert or a change in my application. I can have that raise a ticket in the service desk as well, and it publishes an alert, which means that I can I'm proactively understanding the changes to my applications, as opposed to having to go run reports, search and find them. So what I'm now going to do is I'm going to go and rescan that host, because obviously what's important is if it's a change, I want to be able to make sure that automatically updates or closes itself. So if I go back in and run a scan, and we're going to put that host back. So now that the host is successfully scanned in, if I go back into the application model in uControl and I go to my application and do my summary page, you can see that it's now all gone back to green. That's because the alert has auto closed itself. The alert that we had down here is now gone from open issues, and it's now gone into closed. We can see that it was a missing CI, the host had gone, it's auto closed itself, so we haven't had to take any actions whatsoever at all. And the most important thing about this is it enables the application owner to automatically be alerted to change. It enables them to automatically authorize that change. So when that alert comes through, they just need to say accept or reject the alert. that automatically updates the map if that's kind of what they want that to do for them. And at all times you kind of can understand what's being monitored. You can track what is happening with your applications. Everything is audited from that perspective. We can see the history of all the alerts. We can understand what is being done, and everything is all down to reducing the effort and the time it takes to model those apps.